Hey, so glad you're here with us today. And I'm sure you want to know how to write email content that people love, that they look forward to, right? And if you started a business, you may have not thought, oh gosh, how do I write emails and I have to do all this different type of writing for my business? I'm not a writer, but my next guest will definitely disagree with you because she is the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Everybody Writes. And if you think you own a business and you're not a writer, she's, like I said, she's going to disagree with you. I am so excited to have her on the show today. And I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up this month of joyful writing in June by talking about email marketing. This month we talked about blogging with Mike Alton. I've had my friend Dr. Gertrude Nontera talk about personal branding and writing, and Keisha Lee Injay, she talked about striking statements, really aligning your content with your ideal audience and making it memorable. And today we're talking about how to write email that's engaging to your audience and how you can really reach out to them and get them to listen and look forward to your emails. My name is Airom. I'm the founder of Capitalize Social Media, and I help life and business coaches gain visibility and increase impact using Facebook and Instagram marketing tactics that work. I met my next guest, Ann Handley. I'm so excited. She was a keynote speaker at Social Media Marketing World, and she just gave an awesome presentation. If you weren't there, I will have her give a little bit of a taste of what that was like. It was such a great performance presentation. She's a great performer too. And Ann is the Chief Content Officer of Marketing Profs, which is a huge online resource, training programs and online summits and in-person events and resources and free trainings, all sorts of awesome things to help small and large businesses create marketing campaigns that drive business with over 600,000 members. And Ann Handley, of course, aside from being a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, she is a LinkedIn influencer, and she has, get this, over 450,000 followers on Twitter. People are just waiting for her on the edge of their seat, wanting to know what she's going to write next. And she's a mom, she's an amazing person, and I just cannot wait to share her with you. And last but not least, you can enter to win a copy of her book. I've got it right here. Everybody Writes. This is the best book ever. I just finished it, and I'm giving away a copy of it. So if you want to enter to win a copy of this book during this live episode, all you have to do is write in the comments, "I am a writer," because you are a writer and everybody is. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Ann Handley. Yay! Oh my gosh, you're here.
Oh my gosh. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hello. We got Tim, Melody here. Oh my gosh. So many people excited to see you and meet you and hear from you live.
That's awesome. Yeah.
They might have seen you at Social Media Marketing World. If they're not, they're in for a treat. This is just so exciting. Super exciting. Tim is a writer. Yay, we're all writers. You own a business, you're a writer, and there's so much content and so much awesomeness to put out into the world. And we want people to hear about it, of course. So I want to stop talking and I want to hear from you. And I just go on and on and on because I'm so excited. Yay,
that's awesome.
I'm the writer too. And I want to hear, I read your book and I've done a lot of research about you online, and I want to know, more about, tell us about your, where you got your start. You've been writing for a long time, and I just want to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Amy, and hi, everybody here. I was in the green room during that very generous introduction. So yeah, it's nice to finally be here and to be on camera instead of in backstage. I ate all of your snacks, by the way, Amy, that you had in the green room. So you might want to replenish. Just a thought. So how did I get my start? So, when I was 8 years old, I wrote in my diary that I wanted to be a writer, and I misspelled Ritter because I needed an editor even back then. But I always wanted to be a writer. And so like any bookish kid, or like you would for any bookish kid, my parents, my family extended family, everybody was always giving me diaries, like diaries to write in, journals to write in.
Yeah.
And I would make a concerted effort. I would last about a week, and then I would just kind of like give it up because it just wasn't inherently interesting to me. What was interesting to me was writing to connect with readers, right, with an audience. And so that summer, I started I started a newsletter way before email. I started a newsletter in my neighborhood, and I would type it on my dad's typewriter in his office, and he would take it to work, and he would mimeograph it, Xerox it for like 10, 12 copies, and I would ride around my bike in the neighborhood and deliver them into people's mailboxes. And so that was my very first foray into being a publisher and into being a published writer. I did everything myself, from writing and editing. I did all the artwork, and I did the distribution. So I really owned that publishing process, that content process, right from ideation through the strategy to the delivery. And so yeah, all that to say, I've always been about the audience. To me, it's always been inherently uninteresting to write just for myself. It's been way more interesting to use my words, my writing, to build an audience and to connect with people. And those very early days when I was 8 years old on my bike in the neighborhood, I think about it a lot because it's actually the very same thing that I do now.
That is the cutest story ever. Oh my gosh.
It's 100% true. Yeah.
So cute. Wow. Yes.
Yeah. I got a little weirder. I will tell you, the weirder part of that story was then. So, as I said, always wanted to write for an audience. And eventually I started having pen pals. So I would write to pen pals all around the world. But again, it was so boring to me to write just about myself and what I thought and what was going on in my world. I had a very tiny world in the sense that I lived in the suburbs of Boston. There wasn't a lot going on in my life, comparatively. And so what I decided to do was invent all these personas for myself. And I kept it all straight in a notebook. At one point I had about, 13, 14 pen pals all around the world going. And I would keep it straight in a notebook. And I would be like for this pen pal that I had in Japan, I was a twin. I lived on a farm. I'm not a twin. I didn't live on a farm. And another one, I was one of 13 siblings. I'm one of 4. I just had all these crazy stories. Another one, I was super into horseback riding. I mean, it was all this stuff that I just made up. And so I would literally keep it all straight in a notebook, and I would research that person. Okay, if I lived on a farm, what would be happening right now in late June on a farm? And I would write about that. And I would research it in the library, which is that's really extra, isn't it? Think about that now. I still have that notebook, so it's 100% true. I was finally scared straight when I had a pen pal named David in Australia. And one day David, his family and he were coming to the States on vacation. And so he called my house. I don't know how he got my number, maybe just through, directory assistance or something like that. Got my phone number, called my house, and my mother answered the phone, and she calls me and she's like, Annie, there's a David long distance on the phone. And I was just like it was too real. You know what I mean? David thought I lived in a city high rise. I had a little kitten named Boots, and it was none of that was true. And it was I was going to be found out instantly. So I was I'm not going to be home that week to David. Hung up the phone. So yeah, that scared me straight out of any sort of persona kind of writing. After that, I was committed to the truth from there on out. So
it's a lot to keep track of, right?
It was a lot to keep track of. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how I got my start as a writer, as a liar, basically.
It's a very creative, with a very large imagination.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Fun times.
I love it. Oh, Laurie says Laurie Friedrich's here. She has
your book. Hey, Laurie. I know Laurie. Yeah.
We got lots of writers here. Oh, my friend Melody, she was teaching a digital marketing class at National University and referenced your content rules book, your first book.
Thank you, Melody. That was very nice. Thank you.
She also was a big fan of pen pals. It's hard to even think about that now.
I know. It's such an odd concept. I know, writing a letter and then putting it in the mailbox and then waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, I had, like I said, I had pen pals all over the world, Malaysia, and I had one in outside of London, and I had David in Australia. It was like, all over the place.
Even in
So yeah,
Australia,
and
look you
that's
up.
actually why I had so many of them, because I had to wait so long to get a response. I couldn't wait 6 weeks. Yeah, exactly. I had to keep the rotation. So basically, now that I think about it, it was a pipeline, right? I mean, I was
Perfect
constantly filling
analogy.
the pipeline. Yeah, kind of works. I should build that into a talk someday. I feel it happening right now.
Right, seriously. Oh my God,
It
that's a
happened
great
on your
story.
show, Amy.
Right here, Coaches Go Social. Yes. Oh, speaking of your talk,
Yeah.
what about your talk in social media marketing world, your keynote speech? Like
Yes.
that, people are
Yes.
still talking about bun and like how
Fun.
what a great analogy that is. Could you give maybe some people that haven't? I know Melody wasn't there. Some people that weren't here to kind of give them a
Yeah.
little synopsis.
Yeah. So, boy, social media marketing world feels like it was a lifetime ago, doesn't it? I
And
mean,
the
it was
last conference
beginning of
ever.
March. Yeah. Who knew? Who knew that that would be the last conference of 2020, last in-person conference of 2020? Isn't that amazing?
It is. We got
It's
lucky
also,
for
yeah,
sure.
it's also a slight miracle, I think, that, all of us didn't get coronavirus after that, because that was right at the beginning of it, right? And there were cases in California at the time. So, yeah, anyway,
Right.
crazy. So that was a fantastic event, and I guess if it were to be the last event of 2020 for me, then I guess it was a great one to to cap the year with, as it happens, capping a year in
Totally.
March. What a concept! But anyway, yeah. So I told a story about my backyard rabbit. His name is Bun. I named him Bun, and it was a story about how I nurtured him from the time that he was a little baby rabbit, just who showed up in my backyard randomly one day. And over the course of last summer, my attempts to try to make friends with Bun. So it became a rabbit conversion story, essentially, where my goal at the end, the sale, if you will, was to get Bun to eat something from my hand, a piece of lettuce or carrots or something like that. And so it was a story that played out over time last summer, trying to convert Bun from awareness into basically advocacy. So, funny story, Bun is still around right now. So he was a little baby bunny last year. He kind of disappeared for the winter because I live in Boston, and it gets cold. We built a house for him in the backyard, a little bun house. Which I don't know that he ever lived in it, but man, it looks super cute in the backyard. So anyway, so we have that. And then this year he showed up a few weeks ago, and Bun, it was actually Father's Day weekend. So it was last weekend. He showed up on Friday, and Bun had a little baby rabbit with him. So it was Bun's son, basically. And so everybody was like, oh, well, then Bun must be a girl because Bun has a baby. And I was like, no, because it's Father's Day weekend. So, of course, Bun is going to be out with his son because that's what dads do on Father's Day weekend. So don't try to tell me that Bun is a girl, because Bun is absolutely a boy. And I am committed to that story. So
Makes sense. Out with
yeah,
his father
it
on
does.
Father's Day. It totally makes sense. How cute.
Yeah,
How
it was
cute.
super cute. He's such a good little guy. And so anyway, so now I'm working on the son. So it's now turned into, it's not just a conversion story. It's really about now. Well, we've gone through retention because Bun is still here over a year later, and now we're into, so yeah, definitely loyalty is there. So now we're into referrals. So referrals is when he's bringing his little son into my world. So I'm going to work on the son next. So he and I are kind of doing a dance right now. I came out of the house this morning though, and I have a garden right off of my back door in my backyard. I'm in my tiny house right now, which is on the other side of my yard. It's far back in my yard, and so up closer to the house, I have a vegetable garden there. And I came out this morning, and somebody had basically decimated my herb garden. The parsley is like mowed, and I think it could be Bun's son. So he and I are going to have a little chat, I think. This happened last year with Bun, too. So I've dealt with this before. I've got it,
Like father, like son.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true.
Speaking about like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, we're talking about your daughter and how she's kind of following in your footsteps
Yeah.
in her career. I guess it's such a cool story.
Yeah, so before we went live here today, Amy and I were chatting backstage a little bit, and we were talking about how Everybody Writes, my book is really geared toward helping professionals break out of those rules that you might have learned in high school or in college and get you to just enjoy writing again and creating content for an audience that will actually tell your story and let people know who you are. So I shared with her that my daughter just graduated from college. And so she is now working from home because we all are in this coronavirus situation. She moved home from college. She's been, living here since mid-March. We just passed our 100th day with her being home. Not that I'm counting, but she is. And so she's working on the content team for a tech company in Boston, and she is literally walking the same path that so many marketers are walking, because she is now writing content to connect with an audience and dropping all those high school rules and dropping all the ways she's been writing for the 17 years of her career in school, now starting her career as a professional and really relearning ways that she can connect with audiences. And so it's been kind of fun just to watch that transition for her and to see it actually playing out in real time. She also said to me that she's like, Mom, I'm like basically turning into you, because she's like, I don't go out. I basically stay home all the time, which is like, yeah, me, basically, homebody. And she's like, and I'm working in content at a B2B company. She's like, my God, like, she's me. She's becoming me.
Aww.
So, yeah,
that's the greatest thing ever. I think
it is cute.
All girls turned into their moms, and that's
eventually. I just think it's been accelerated a little bit on her part, but she's such a good kid. She's okay with it, but it's just kind of funny the way she should be. Hopefully, she'll move back to Boston, which is where she went to school, by the fall, and have a little bit of normalcy in her life back. But she said she feels like she went from 20 to 40 like overnight. It's been like boom. 20-year-old going out, like having fun, and now she's just like home with me and the rabbits, so.
Yeah, well, it's a good way to kind of learn what it's going to be like. Hopefully she sees that path as long-term success for herself. Who knows? Skip all the 20-something stuff. I don't know. There's some things in my 20s I could have skipped. Anyway, so moving on to, I love that story, because I know Melody is a mom. She's about to be a real mom for the second time very soon. We've got lots of parents. Tim's your parent. We've got lots of parents in here to relate to that, so I love that. And switching gears to email, I want people to share in the comments, when's the last time you wrote an email to your email list? I won't share that with you. I'm just kidding. Mine was at the beginning of the month. I like to send it at the beginning of the month. It's like a monthly newsletter, but share in the comments when the last time you wrote a newsletter. I know that your book covers every possible writing for our business, as far as, how we can write and how we can have better grammar and connect with our audiences and storytelling. It's just like a perfect reference book for anybody that has a business, which is why I'm super excited to give that away to someone watching today. But emails, literally, how often do you think we should be sending emails? How do we get the attention of the people that are writing the emails? How do you people to look forward to emails? We want people, that's a way to connect, right? So how do we get them to really open it and be excited about it?
Yeah. So I make a distinction between an email newsletter, which I believe is a vehicle for, nurturing and growing your audience, sometimes making sales, but I think its fundamental role is to nurture that relationship with the people who have opted in to hear from you, right? Who want to hear from you. So I make a distinction between the email newsletter and like a transactional email. A sales email or a transactional email, like when somebody orders something from you, or anything purely transactional. So I think the email newsletter is vastly undervalued by, whoops, there we go. Sorry, just accidentally muted myself. I think the email newsletter is vastly undervalued by so many of us. And I think the best way to really connect with your audience is to, yes, absolutely use social media to build your brand, to grow awareness. But ultimately, you want to bring them closer to you. And I think the best way to do that is through an email newsletter. In my experience, most businesses, most organizations, most people when we think about the email newsletter, we focus on the first part of that word. We focus on the news part of it. We focus on what we want to say. We focus on what we have to share. We think of it as a distribution strategy. But I actually think that the smarter way to think about the email newsletter is to focus on the second part of that word. So don't focus on the news, focus on the letter. The reason why I think that is because that's a really unique opportunity that you have as a business owner to connect directly with the person who matters the most to you and your business. They've already opted in to hear from you. They've already checked a box and said, yes, I want to hear from you. That alone is just such an achievement for a business, and we should really be respecting that space. So that's the first thing. The second thing is think about it not as writing to an audience, but you're writing to one person. Just like I had that crazy penpal strategy when I had 14 different people that I was writing to. You as a business owner have that same opportunity just to write to one person. So when somebody opens up your email newsletter, they're not in a room full of people, right? They're not sitting in an audience somewhere. So it's not, hey guys, or it's not, dear all of you, dear friends or dear subscribers. It's really dear you, or it's one person. And so really change the focus of your communication away from audience and friends and something that's plural into the singular, dear you, dear and individual. And think about really how can you help that person and what do you actually want to say to them? I think when you shift your mindset from a distribution strategy to the letter strategy, so less news and more letter, I think it changes the way you communicate. So my challenge to every business owner, every coach, every person, every individual, every large B2B corporation, it doesn't matter, but think about that one person who's opening your email and what do they need from you the most? What will they value the most? That's what you should be sharing with them.
Yeah, connecting one-on-one. I think we forget that sometimes, where we think we're writing this letter to everybody and just blasting it out, but that one person is looking at your email like you're talking to them one-on-one, just like we're talking to each individual person right now. It's really good.
Yeah, I think actually that frequency is important too. So, whatever schedule you can manage. I think the very minimum. I mean, I know a couple of you have said monthly, but if you can manage every other week, I think fortnightly. I would say biweekly, but biweekly is a confusing word because it can mean both twice a week as well as every other week, and so. That's why I like the word fortnightly, because it's every other week. So if you can manage twice a month or fortnightly, I think it's that much better. Monthly is just a little infrequent, I think, for the people that you want to communicate with. And you go away for too long in between. So if all you can manage is monthly and that's what you need, that kind of cadence to do an excellent job, then by all means continue. If it's working for you, great. But if you're feeling like you want to up it a little bit, I think it's perfectly... I think it's beneficial actually to think about it on a more frequent basis. So every 2 weeks to me feels like a better cadence, because when I get emails from companies, from individuals, even monthly, it feels like there's just too much time that goes on in between. There's too much that happens,
Definitely, yeah, I think so too. I write my one newsletter a month. Melody says that she used to do it every month. Now she does it every quarter. Nacha says she does it weekly. Melody wants to get back into monthly. Melody wrote a LinkedIn course that talked about newsletters and she should be more consistent.
Oh, Melody, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, LinkedIn learning course, she's awesome. And so practicing what we preach. But I think, talking, and this is another thing too, I was wondering, when we're, how much of our personality, I think that's something that you really bring forward is should we be funny or should we not? We should just be ourselves, right? We shouldn't just be someone that's, writing behind a computer. What's your take on that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, of course. And so, again, I think that's the importance of thinking about that one person who you're trying to affect, because it does allow you to communicate in a more personal, sort of intimate style. It's really paralyzing when you think about sitting down and writing to an entire audience of people, because I don't know, it's easier to clam up, I think, in that situation. So when you think about just one person, I told a story at Social Media Marketing World that I'll share with you too, but Warren Buffett, icon of industry, chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, every year he writes his letter to shareholders, to all of the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway, tens of thousands of shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway. that letter gets picked up by the press. It gets dissected by every economist out there. Everybody wants to know what Warren Buffett thinks about the state of the economy in the given year, right? It comes out in February of every year. But when Warren Buffett, again, tens of thousands of people, icon of industry, super big footprint, when he sits down to write his letter to shareholders, he doesn't think about all of that. He thinks about one person. He thinks about his sister, Doris. Doris is a shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. She does not have a very deep financial knowledge, but she's smart and she knows what's what, you know? And so Warren says that he writes his letter as if he were talking to Doris. And he said, I try to put in the letter what I would tell her about the business if we sat down for an afternoon. And that's exactly the mindset that I think we need to take as content creators within that newsletter construct, is just to communicate with Doris, right? Write to Doris. Who is your Doris? Think about who that person is and write to them. I think it changes your voice. It'll make you a whole lot more accessible and friendly, and it'll just make it more fun to communicate and fun to read.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Again, going back to just connecting, right? You're writing content to connect. And if you're talking to one person, it's a lot easier to connect to that one person than it is to a whole bunch of people at once. So yes, I definitely agree with that. That's so good. That's a good reminder. And cool story too. We'll look forward to his email. That's interesting. I like your emails. I read your emails all the time. So I'm like, what can I take from this? You know, it's very, you know, it's, I don't want to say informal. It's informative and it's just fun. You know, and you use every opportunity to add some little like humor into it. It's just, sometimes you're not expecting. It's like, oh, that's really funny. Like, now I want to look for the next one. What funny thing is she going to say in the next one? Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really good practice for us, because I think as business owners, you know, we end up being like, this is what we're talking about today, and like being like super serious and talking about, you know, of course we want to educate our audience, but like let that personality come out and let it be something fun that, you know, people do look forward to, not just another email, because we all know we all get emails, tons of emails in our inbox all the time, but we want to be the one that people look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's why I started my email newsletter 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I had something like, 2,000 people on my list who had opted in just to to get a notification every time I published a new blog post on my own website, on annhandley.com. So not on Marketing Profs, but on annhandley.com. And the reason why I started the email newsletter is because I wanted that opportunity that we're talking about here to communicate directly with somebody. I also just wanted to own something. You know, I mean, the further you get along in your career, the less you actually touch as a content creator. I mean, the less you touch the content that you're actually producing. So, for example, when I started at Marketing Profs, I was like that kid on a bike delivering my newsletter, right? I put it together, I solicited content, I loaded it into the email system for delivery, like all of that stuff. I was doing all that. But then as my career advanced, fast forward 15 years later, I'm not doing any of that anymore. So I really missed it. I missed touching something. And so on my own site at Ann Handley, I decided to start an email newsletter. So if you go to annhandley.com/newsletter, you can sign up for it. And if you're not on the list, I'd love for you just to check it out. But I started it because I wanted to be able to touch something fully again. Like I wanted 100% responsibility for it. And where was I going with that story? Where was I going with that? I forget where I was going, Amy.
You're funny. I was saying how funny you are and how all your.
Oh, right. That's what it was. Okay. So over those 2 years, so it started with just around 2,000 people. Now I'm almost at 30,000 for the number of subscribers on that list. And when I think about sending an email to 30,000 people every other Sunday, which is when the email newsletter goes out, like that would be paralyzing for me. Like I would be terrified, it would just stop me. So I don't think about the 30,000 people. I think about one person. I might think about a conversation that you and I had today that might spark something in my brain. Like maybe I'll talk about that my persona exercise when I was when I had all those pen pals. I mean, I don't know, but there's usually one person that I have in my brain. I think about that, my own Doris, every other Sunday when I sit down to write the newsletter, and it really helps me get over that hump, and it helps me be a whole lot more conversational and and funny and just a little bit weird sometimes, but whatever. It's like I want people to get a sense of me and my personality.
I love it. Well, we're already out of time. I know you have to go, but last but not least, I just want to make sure everyone knows where to connect with you. I know I love connecting with you on Instagram.
Yeah,
And
Instagram is my favorite social place to play, I would say. On Twitter, I'm twitter.com/marketingprofs or Ann Handley. Both of them are me. Marketing Profs tends to be a little bit more buttoned up. Ann Handley tends to be a little bit more casual. Let's see, I am on Instagram, as Amy just mentioned, but and if you want to sign up for my email newsletter, like I said, you can get that from annhandley.com/newsletter. I'm not usually on Facebook, so you actually managed to get me here on Facebook, which is a little unusual. I'm usually not here. And I dip into LinkedIn now and again, but I think Instagram is my favorite just sort of place to play. So that tends to be where I spend a lot of time as well, just hanging around.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I take the show, I'll take clips of it and put it on Instagram and LinkedIn and all sorts of fun stuff. So,
Sweet.
yay.
Cool.
Yay.
Thank you so much. So good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. And yeah, hopefully I'll connect with you all at some point.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Good
all right,
seeing you
thanks.
again.
Bye.
Bye.